So, I'm going to be talking about how the Matrix Trilogy can be thought of metaphorically as an allegory for how society is right now. So, take the screen as the Matrix, and the screen exists in order to conceal that all of our real categories, our real representation of nature, is also artificial. And by reality, I mean our linguistic binary interface. And by binary, I mean that every verb is or isn't, will or won't. Everything's defined in a binary way. All the concepts. And so that gives this idea that nature has these one-to-one relationships. Like, I push this button and the machine does this. That's what our left brain likes. It likes these one-to-one relationships. Whereas our right brain, which I call the natural, it's like the natural representation of experience as nature. So the right brain deals with anything ambiguous, and it uses rules of thumb. So it doesn't go, if this happens, then this has to happen. It's not like pushing a button and you know the effect that's going to happen. The right brain thinks statistically and roughly. When I say statistically, I don't mean that it like statistics class where you have a precise answer. It's not quantitative, it's all qualitative. What else? So the right brain you might call analog, and the left brain is digital. And nature is also, so the right brain is analog, and so is nature. So for example, if you take the electron mass, it's always only going to be sort of the same. In the same sense, an analog wave from a synthesizer, it's not always going to be the same. The signal is always going to look slightly different. So in nature, everything's only sorta the same, and also you always only know maybe. You don't have precise answers. What else? So when I say like the electron mass, if it were actually a number, not simply is it not a quantity, it's not a quantity, a uniform quantity, like it's precisely this. They try to make it seem like it's one quantity because they just call the variation margin of error. That's how they get away with that. But it's not simply not a uniform quantity. It's not a quantity. It's actually a quality. So the electron mass is a quality. We artificially represent nature quantitatively. It's not literally divided up into these uniform units. Just like the Earth is not literally divided into latitude and longitude. I'm saying that, and our cells aren't literally divided up into seconds. So I'm saying that electrons aren't literally divided up into uniform units, and these uniform units are always conventionally defined. They're like joules or volts, and these are things that we can observe. What else? And also, we know that nature is not quantitative. We can see it's an interface because you could define like all the natural constants as anything you want. You could define the speed of light as 1, and then you just have to shift all the other constants. It's just all coherent. It doesn't have to be a certain quantity. It's a representation. And a lot of philosophers have sort of hinted at this like throughout history. I'm not like the first person that said something like this. But now there's neurological evidence that there's like a hemispheric conflict, and it's masked as like a worldview conflict. Um, because the left brain is, or one neurologist, Ian McGilchrist, would sort of say that the left, if you might want to call the left brain science and the right brain nature. That's a good way of looking at it, just like analog and digital. And science wants everything that's always true, just like a machine. That's why they call it the mechanistic worldview. It's not that it is a machine, but it behaves as if it's a machine, because the left brain likes machines and things that behave like machines, or anything human-made, basically. So the left brain likes one-to-one relationships, so it will like recognize a part, and that part has like a one-to-one relationship with like a type of machine. And so you see, oh, if this part, then it's this type of machine. But the part itself has to be recognized by the right brain, because the right brain doesn't go if A then B, it goes it can be, and then it can't be anything else within what's known. So it's not pointing directly at something. That's another way of looking at it. I have a lot to say. Let's see. So the right brain uses rules of thumb. It's usually dealing with like, say like types of people, and you have like rules of thumb for types of people. And even the types, they only have like a resemblance to each other. It's not like it's defined like in a one-to-one way. In particulars, you could see that we recognize a face. There's many ways that we could recognize that this is this person, with many different angles of the face and whether the person ages or not. Whereas the left brain is looking for that one unique part, so it can go if A then B. But that's why the right brain is associated with recognizing faces more so than the left brain. What else? History. Like, all conflicts in history are really, one side is more bureaucratic and more linguistic, and the other side is seen as more primitive. I say it is closer to nature. Calling it more primitive is the racism part, or personality racism. Racism is just a cloak for personality racism, which is more general. Because generally speaking, it's the white people that are oppressing the darker people, and the whiter people are more bureaucratic and more linguistic. And you can see this in the difference in third world countries versus America, for example. There's way more emphasis on regulations and things like that. There's schedules, and you can even just see the difference. All of civilization is sort of moving that way generally too, where the wild west, to say now, we're like it's a left brain prioritized society, more so than it was 200, 300 years ago. That's all I'm saying. So, not simply like white people versus Indians, white people versus black people, white people versus Mexicans, but it's also like that show, The Last Kingdom, on Netflix. The Danes, who are white, invaded the British and tried to take them over, but the Danes didn't actually have writing, so they were less linguistic than the British people, and the British people were more bureaucratic, so they saw the Danes as like heathens, which is sort of like they're rogue and wild and primitive, kind of like the Romans saw the people that were attacking them, or Alexander the Great and him conquering everyone. That's all, like, you can see a left brain, right brain difference in every case. But it's not always, that's what I'm saying, it's not always the more left brain side that's oppressing. Like, the Danes are the more right brain prioritized side, and they're trying to take over the left brain prioritized side. And then there's Hitler, is another example of that, whereas it was a bureaucrat, like the Jews were seen as the more linguistic, more bureaucratic, and it wasn't Hitler. It was like Hitler was sort of appealing to a base, and he got them all riled up. It wasn't like one person, it was a whole phenomenon. But that's just another case of where it's not the left brain. And that's related to what do I want to talk about? Anyway, so you could also see history as a simulated dance of power and righteousness. So what I mean by that is power is the left brain prioritized left brain at work, and righteousness is the right brain prioritized left brain. So almost all anger is triggered by the left brain, but the right brain uses the left brain, and the left brain uses the right brain for its purposes. So there's a difference between right brain and right brain prioritized. I'm not going to get into that difference right now, but what was my point? So anyway, that struggle's been going on throughout history, and The Last Jedi is a good example of that. Whereas Luke Skywalker is kind of jaded. This isn't directly related, but like the Jedi Sith lore, like that conflict has been going on for like 1,000 years in their little backstory, and you can imagine jaded Luke Skywalker seeing that everything that he's ever done has been ruined, and like it didn't matter because this conflict has been going on for 1,000 years, and it's because the Jedi excluded the Sith because they didn't fit all their criteria. So anyway, so that's related to serial killers versus parallel killers. I've been watching Mindhunter, and I was noticing that these serial killers, they're all about power and domination. They use terms like that when they talk. And that's different than these school shootings and these mass shootings to where they're killing in parallel. It's more righteousness. They feel like they've been wronged, and they're trying to spread that out amongst the people that they felt wronged by. If I can't be happy, then they all can't be happy, kind of a thing. Everyone's ganging up on me. And that's a whole new thing. But you could tell it's the right brain that's doing that moral judgment stuff, where it's evaluating, but it's the left brain that's triggering the anger. So, and also the left brain, you can think of it as the left brain is when everything's going according to plan. And the right brain is when things aren't going according to plan, and you have to reevaluate things. It's like the anomaly detector, the problem detector whenever there's a problem. So it's combining reasons and integrating them. And it reevaluates a plan, or it's evaluating a new plan. It deals with anything new or that has to be revised. That's basically what it is. And the left brain is sort of like our autopilot mode. It's when we're just doing things and talking. And then the right brain, also, it can combine like rules of thumb. Say you're trying to evaluate whether something's true or not, and you're interviewing all the witnesses, and you have this rough sort of like a credibility rule of thumb with each person, or you may have many rules of thumb, and these are not things that are linguistically expressible all the time. We just call them gut feelings or whatever, but we're integrating these rules of thumb like for types of people, and then we're trying to get a sense of whether we think they're lying or they're full of shit. Or the right brain is the bullshit detector, And the left brain is all about anger and denial and pride and power, and what's fixed and known. The right brain deals with the background more, the peripheral vision, where you're not sure what things are, but the left brain's dealing with things that are static, like we're focusing on the details of one object very intently, to the exclusion of the background. But that's only occurs when things are known, when things are in focus. I think that's all I want to talk about. Until next time.